sounds like. Solid rhythm. A good sawmill has a certain hum to it.
I'm Sharon Brett-Kelly, and today the detail is at a timber mill in Kawerau. And I'm being told that this is a good sawmill because it's got good rhythm. I'm here to get a bigger picture of the industry after the closure of Winstone Pulp's sawmill and pulp mill in Ruapehu district, with 230 jobs lost. The owners blamed sky-high electricity costs, and they're not the only ones calling out unsustainable energy prices. They're the latest in a long line of mill closures. But does that mean the whole industry is in trouble?
Come meet Sharon.
I'm with David Turner, the chief executive of Sequal, which owns this mill in Eastern Bay of Plenty, to get a different take. They're getting ready to double production here, and power prices are nowhere near the biggest challenge.
When you produce sawn timber, 45% of the product is waste. So you got wood, chip and sawdust. So if you come and have a look over here.
We're upstairs looking out over the timber yard with the hum of the sawmill in the background.
So these trucks that are lining up here are constantly taking away the sawdust and wood chip that we make. And that's going to OG to create pulp and paper, and in the case of sawdust, it's going to Nature's Flame and Topor to create wood pellets, which in turn have been delivered to Fonterra to help them decarbonise their business. So, you know, there is this integrated supply chain that's quite dependent on each other. And basically, if you can't sell your residues, your wood chip and your sawdust, then sawmilling's not a profitable industry.
Gosh, I didn't realise it produced that much kind of waste. Do you call it waste or off?
I call it
side product or
residue.
something? Residue.
It's actually a valuable product.
Can we describe what we're seeing here, David? Because right in front of us is a huge pile of sawdust, then piles of logs out there.
So they all get sorted. So that when the logs come through, they get sorted back here, and they get sorted into 1 centimetre diameter classes.
Okay, they get sorted because why?
Once we understand the size of the circle, and we've got a standardised circle, then we can optimise the rectangles, the timber that's going to go inside that circle. So to do that, and in our line, we've got to set up for that. So one of the challenges with our business model is that every 2 or 3 hours we have to change to be able to deliver what a customer wants. So we don't have a standard size. We cut hundreds and hundreds of different dimensions and different grades. And we do that because that's what customers want.
So you're cutting for your customers?
Yes.
And this scene right here is sort of a typical scene of a timber mill, is it? Forest in the background.
Yeah, Kawerau forest is one of the biggest exotic forests in the world.
Is that where all of your timber comes from?
Not all of it, but I'd say 75%.
And that must be a huge benefit that it's right there on your doorstep.
Definitely. That's why I always maintain that New Zealand's the best place in the world to have a primary processing business in wood products. We've always got a competitive advantage over others, and the only reason we export logs is because of all the other benefits that other governments give their manufacturers.
That's a message to the government, right? And this is like a conveyor belt that we're looking at down here that obviously carries the log inside to the factory.
Yep, so the logs get singulated, they come through here to get debarked, so make sure there's no bark on the log.
In this room that overlooks the timber yard on one side and the mill on the other is a high-tech system that scans each log and measures it precisely. And that is one thing that sets this mill apart.
Matt's the main saw line runner, so you've got one person who runs the whole saw line. And the first thing you see is a scanner. So the scanner scans the log and it optimises the position and the rotation of the log to try and maximise yield.
Matt Bowker is sitting in front of several computer screens. Can you describe what we're seeing here? You've got four screens on this side and another 4 screens on your right-hand side.
Yeah, we're currently just in the green mill, so cameras that we're watching here are allowing us to sort of see inwards the manufacturing on all through the saw line, which I think I've seen you on the cameras walking around, right out to where the packets are being put into the yard. Mm-hmm. So Yeah, main priority for what we're doing right now is just making sure that we've got a consistent flow of wood through the mill, making sure everyone's gainfully employed in terms of the operating positions that they're stationed at.
4 screens on the left-hand side are all cameras in the factory.
Yeah, correct.
And then the one that we're looking at on the right-hand side.
Yeah, the lower left. Yeah, so that's one of our scanners, and that scanner is taking into consideration the shape of the log. Not all logs are the same, just like people. And what we're trying to do is fit as many of the boards that we've got for this particular cut plan onto every log that we've got coming through. So what that does create, as I'll show you on one of these cameras, you'll see the log not just feed through, you'll see the log actually rotating.
Yeah.
So that's rotating to a specific position of which we think will get the most out of each log.
That is reading.
That's giving the feedback to that section of the line. And then the rest of it is just how fast we're running each section and these other parts. This is like an operational tool that we use to help us in all parts of the mill understand how it's running. So it's a business intelligence tool.
How many logs are running through here, say in an hour?
Yeah, great question. So that's what actually I'm logging down the bottom here. So currently we're running at about 10.3 logs per minute coming into the mill. 600 an hour is what, if we ran 100% perfectly, we'd be running it right now.
Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Yes, Matty. So when we complete our upgrade, instead of running at 10 logs a minute, we'll be able to run at 20 logs a minute. It enables us to double the speed.
And you're doing the upgrade because you've got so much demand. Double the amount that you can supply. Well, we'll talk about that a bit later. This radiata pine is sent around the world to be used in construction, for pallets, furniture and packaging. But because the cutting can be so precise, parts of one log can end up in 6 different countries. You know, what's interesting is looking behind you, David, that's Kawerau industry, isn't it?
Yeah, at its best. So, yeah, Kawerau's definitely the best place in the world to have an industrial business.
Why is that?
We've just got so many natural advantages here. So proximity to resource, availability of industrial land, geothermal energy, direct heat. Here he is. Boys, come and meet Danny. Danny's one of our heat fitters.
Hi.
Sharon. Hey, Sharon.
Nice to meet you, Danny.
You as well. So Danny's responsible to make sure the machine's running, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah.
How long have you been here, Danny?
Roughly about 6 years. Yeah.
From Kawerau?
From Kawerau.
Done his apprenticeship with us.
Yeah, I've upskilled here. Now I'm filling in another manager's position for 6 weeks.
Good place to work?
Best place. From closing my gate, 6 minutes. 6 minutes clocking in. Yeah.
And that's not just because the boss is right here that you're saying it's the best place. That's great, thank you. Got a woman working here.
About 35% women.
He's saying that the company employs 35% women. The work's not so physical in the mill these days, and they are employed for their eye for detail and good character, their willingness to show up for work.
I think we're about 85% Māori workforce, and I think about 40% of our workforce is between the ages of 16 and 25.
What makeup of that workforce is local people?
You know, between Kawerau, Sequal, Whakatane, in the broad sense, everyone's local. We don't actually ask if they're from Kawerau. Everyone's from the Eastern Bay.
Yeah. So how many people work here?
Total workforce 120. This is some new kilns that we're putting in.
They look like big propellers.
Putting another couple of kilns in here, and then we're building a treatment plant just to the left, so it'll happen in the next 12 months.
What are the kilns for?
Drying the wood.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Once the wood's processed.
So this is where the kiln's going to go, this cladded concrete?
Kilns will go here,
Yeah.
treatment plant goes over there.
How much land do you occupy here?
There's about 25 acres on this side, but we also have that block, and if you go down that street, we've got all of that land in those buildings as well.
Gosh, you've really expanded then. How did you start out?
We started out with this little block here and just this building. So the area we are now, you used to have to wear gumboots to walk through because it was knee-high in mud.
What's up on the shed here is the word give, then 3 rectangular bars, and then more.
Yeah.
Is that like your slogan?
Yes, yeah. Give more. Okay. What Sequal actually represents is these 3 bars, and that idea that you grow by giving, that you got to give your customers more than wood, and you got to give more to the future.
We'll carry on the interview is this your boardroom?
It's just one of the training rooms, yeah.
Which overlooks the
timber yard.
The yard. David, can you give me some facts and figures? How much you export, what we're seeing going through here, and where it's all going to?
So we process about 600,000 tonne of logs today, and where we send that is really dynamic. So we don't have a market per se. Our market is the world, and we only cut a log if we've got an order. So we have 0 stock. So everything's cut to order. And so to do that, we need some quite sophisticated technology that we've spent a number of years investing in, and that does all of our optimisation and planning. And then those cut plans are sent through to the operations team who you've been speaking to.
So if you didn't have any orders, there would be nothing out there. There'd be no timber sitting there in your yard. That is all.
We wouldn't be cut. Yeah. So everything's sold.
Is that unusual?
Yeah. Our business model is called mass customisation. Historically, sawmilling's always been a mass standardised model, and that's true of all manufacturing. So Henry Ford, as the father of industrialisation, the whole industrial age was predicated on this idea of standardisation. You can have any car you want as long as it's Model T and it's black. And that's how we've been able to garner efficiencies. So majority of sawmills all over the world will predicate their business on production efficiency. They have standardised products that are for a specific market. And that's a really good thing to do if you've got a really, really, really big market. It's a really hard thing to do when you have a small market like New Zealand, but a massive availability of raw material. So the markets that we go into are very dynamic, and they all want something different. So the only way you can scale out of New Zealand is there's 2 ways. One, you can supply the domestic framing market, but in reality, we only need 2 sawmills to cover that. Mm-hmm. There's not enough domestic demand to warrant that. So then you have to look offshore, and the world's awash with demand for wood, but it's highly variable, highly competitive, and you go from being incubated here to having to compete with the biggest wood processors in the world, and that's what we have to do every day.
David won't say exactly who his customers are, but they stretch from South Korea to Saudi Arabia, and it's all processed timber.
What I'm really proud of is that a little family business in Kawerau can compete with Kawerau and Sequal locals, and we compete with the biggest sawmills in the world. And we do that all through Asia and the Middle East.
How tricky is that, though? Because Asia and the Middle East, I mean, Asia seems like an attractive market, but is it?
It's a challenging market. There's a lot of demand there. It's challenging because you're competing with Russian wood, European wood, South American wood. You know, you're competing with some of the biggest companies, wood processors in the world. You need to have that presence and those relationships to be able to get that continuity of demand. So yeah, it's taken a lot of investment.
What about the Middle East?
Middle East is the same story. You know, the demand is insatiable. We're benefiting here because of the challenges through the sewers, because for that Eastern European wood to get through the sewers now they have to go around the Horn. So actually it's easier for us to get to that market today than it potentially is for the Europeans. But
is that because of the war that's going on at the moment?
Yeah, because of what's happening with the Yemen attacks in that Black Sea region means that none of the container ships want to go through the sewers.
But currently the route that you're taking is not affected by what's going, the geopolitics in the region?
Not at the moment, but it's definite risk.
How worrying is that?
Not at all, to be honest.
Isn't it?
Well, because I can't control it, so I don't worry about it.
So you just press on and hope that you can carry on with business despite it? Yeah,
look, for us, it's about being nimble and dynamic. So if that avenue closed for us, we'll open up another one.
So what's your biggest worry at the moment?
Probably the upgrade this Christmas, to be honest. I don't want any of my customers to run out of wood. Basically, 60% of my supply goes to about 12 companies around the world, and I need to make sure that they don't run out, because once they get forced into a position they have to find an alternative, it would be difficult for us to reassert the relationship as it was. So making sure that this upgrade is only a 6-week shut, no more, is probably the biggest concern for me right now.
And this upgrade, can you tell me a bit more about it? What's happening?
So the main saw line gets a significant rebuild, and that's going to enable us to, amongst other things, it's going to enable us to double our production through that main saw line. It's also enabling us to do a lot more optimisation and speed of change, and then alongside that we're upgrading our outfeeds as well. So obviously if we're producing a lot more wood, we need to be able to pull away faster.
2 mills owned by Winstone have just shut down in the central North Island, devastating for the local community. And there's a lot of talk that the high energy cost put pressure on them, it's putting pressure on other manufacturers, other big industries. Is that a pressure for you?
It hasn't been for us for a couple of reasons. So firstly, we hedge our electricity price. Secondly, primary processing here in a sawmill is not really in high energy usage. So energy costs for us is quite a small percent relative to log price. So 70% of my cost is the price of a log. So the big driver for our success is logs and the log price. So the biggest impact for us historically has been the price distortion created through Chinese demand for New Zealand logs, and that distortion has challenged a lot of the ability for New Zealand processors to invest in new technology over the last decade. So with respect to the sawmilling aspects of the wood processing business, I don't see electricity as the biggest contributor or driver. However, with pulp mills are much more sensitive to electricity, so they are some of our biggest consumers of electricity in the country. And so for the pulp mill, I can understand how electricity price volatility would impact them.
And how is it going at the moment? I mean, clearly you're succeeding, but the industry as a whole?
It's challenging because most sawmills are dependent on construction and domestic demand. The domestic housing starts have been really low, so you'll find that the sawmilling market domestically has been struggling.
And at the other end, sourcing the timber, because you don't own the forest, do you? You buy the timber from someone else. The forestry industry on the east coast has pretty much closed down. You get most of it from Kawerau forest right here. But does that affect things for the industry?
Not for us, and not necessarily negatively. So the decline in demand for logs from China has actually been a good thing for domestic manufacturing, and it's helped with our relationships with our forest owners too. So,
in terms of what happened around the closure and attempts to do something, the government got involved in trying to do something to prevent the closure of those 2 mills in the central North Island. Were you involved at any level on that?
No direct involvement. Certainly we've had lots of conversations with people as to what could and should happen. My personal view is, one, it's not the role of the state to be directly engaged with independent businesses. And two, it's the responsibility of the state to make sure that they create the environment which maximises the probabilities that businesses can succeed. And so that's where I think New Zealand's failing. We're not creating the environment. And that's what we're trying to do here in Kawerau. So in Kawerau here, we're trying to create an environment where you've got proximity to the raw materials, you've got a renewable natural source of energy at a reasonable price, you've got industrial land available to you, you've got interconnectivity between industries so you can maximise efficiencies and reduce friction costs between industries. And then in the next 12 to 24 months we hope to have the container terminal, which is minimising the cost for us to access global markets. So
how will that do that? How will the container terminal?
Through the building of the container terminal, we'll bring all of our containerisation back here to Kawerau, and we'll access the port through rail rather than road. It's quite a significant saving if you can get that right, and you're decarbonising your supply chain as well.
So you're doing it. Why can't more people in New Zealand do it? You say that, it's not the role of government to get involved with individual companies, but in your ideal world, what should the government be doing to make things better?
Government should be providing critical infrastructure to make sure that the inputs into manufacturing are globally competitive. We want to focus on renewable energy. You need to encourage continuing investment in that. But if you look at the situation in Europe, where electricity rates have gone negative, there's a big risk for people to invest capital in these long-term assets for generation, not knowing what future demand for electricity is like. So they need some comfort. Equally, when you're reliant on renewable energy, you get this significant volatility seasonally around the cost of electricity. So what could we do to overlay the market, which takes some of the pressure off investment and some of the risk away for manufacturing?
And this is where things get a little technical, but David says the government should set up a financial contract that removes the electricity pricing extremes.
But if we're going to rely on renewable, which I think is a good thing, it's good for New Zealand's brand globally, we have to accept that we're going to have these periods of high volatility. So how are we going to protect industry from that? Equally, if we're going to allow industry to go out of business like we just have, how are we going to give gentailers the confidence to invest in more generation? Because we've already got declining electricity demand.
What do you make of what happened in the North Island with the closure of those mills? Could they have been saved?
I would say that you can't reduce it to that moment in time. I would say it's a collection of failures, not one. So over the last 10 years, you've seen declining wood processing activity in New Zealand. You've seen lots of mills close. The reason they've closed is because we've seen a massive distortion in the market for logs, which has been driven through China. China buys about 80% of our logs. They heavily subsidise their own industry, and they have created the biggest misallocation of resources in the history of humanity. So their construction sector is grossly overbuilt their housing, and that's the primary source of demand for New Zealand logs. Now that's going to slow materially, and the consequence of this is that you've seen a market-based response for the forest owners, which is there's the opportunity, there's where the price is, so we're just going to go there, and that's where we maximise return. The impact is it's been really, really, really hard to grow a wood processing business. So your available capital is very small. If you want to compete globally. So, for example, the price for me to compete with Chile, who's my biggest competitor, the price of a log is twice in New Zealand what it is in Chile. Yet I have to compete with them globally. So when you have this distortion in your market for logs, then for you to grow and survive and invest, it's tough. So I suspect that in the case of WPI, they have been able to survive. That's been a credit to them over the last 10 years. But the consequence is that you don't have a lot of invested capital. You'll be able to invest in growing your competitiveness and across both their businesses, and that's a real challenge over 10 years. And then you get a big spike in electricity prices, and it just feels like it's the straw that potentially broke the camel's back.
Do you benefit in any way from the closure of that mill?
I mean, what I would say to that is that New Zealand as an aggregate, obviously that demand for wood doesn't go away. So their customers don't go away, and they have to find a new home. So in that sense, all of the remaining sawmills in New Zealand will have a set of customers that will be looking for an opportunity. And certainly we would be open to talking to those customers.
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by William Saunders and produced by Gwen McClure. Thanks to David Turner and the team from Sequal. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Ka kite anō.